my channel and welcome back to day 6 in palette week, where every single day for 7 straight days I am posting some sort of palette themed content. And I'm super excited for today's video because we are talking about my least as well as my most used palettes for this quarter. So for the past 3 months, the months of July, August, and September, I started tracking these numbers, I believe in 2020, and I have so much fun coming on every single quarter to kind of let you guys know how many eyeshadow palettes within my collection got used. And it's a really good way for me to reflect on my own use of my collection as well. I am super happy and kind of surprised to report that we had the best usage that we've had all year in quarter 3, and we are going to get into it. So if you're interested in seeing what palettes, how many palettes are in my collection, my palette use percentage for this quarter. If you're interested in hearing all the stats, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit chatting about makeup, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. Okay, I do just want to let you guys know I do have my little hand clips in there around my ponytail today, which I thought was so much fun. Also, I tried to do false lashes with this eye look because it definitely would be a look that's like better suited for falsies, and I just literally can't get false eyelashes on my eyelids, so ignore that. Okay, you guys, let us start with the fan coming on to just annoy us with its sound. Also, by the way, it is Viking Sunday, NFL Sunday. And I went with reverse psychology today. Instead of doing a purple look, I went for blue because we were playing the Chargers today. Okay, so let's start with my usage or percent used out of my collection. And I do just want to recap. So in quarter 1, I actually only ended up using 32 palettes in my palette collection throughout those first 3 months of the year. Quarter 2, we increased, we almost doubled, and I was up to 57 palettes out of my collection got used in quarter 2, and I'm super happy to report that in quarter 3 I used 61 palettes throughout my collection over the course of the last 3 months. I do currently own 160 eyeshadow palettes. That is including all of the newest palettes to my collection, and that means that I only got use out of 39% of my palette collection. But I actually am really happy with that, just considering how large my palette collection is. I feel like that is a pretty good percentage used for 3 months, especially considering that I am currently doing a pan that palette, which I haven't focused on as much the last 3 months, but I have a pan that palette that I'm doing, which, you know, just makes things interesting. I do have a couple other projects that I'm working on, but I feel like those projects will help me get through my palette collection. I'm doing No Pan Left Behind as well as the project Level Up. I will say I was a little bit surprised because I feel like historically I do my eyeshadow the least amount in the summer, or I'm not going for like these super extravagant looks in the summer. I'm usually doing like one shadow and done. But based on the numbers, at least I was good at cycling through my collection while doing that. So I do break things into categories, and those are a palette used anywhere from 1 to 4 times, a palette used anywhere from 5 to 9 times, a palette used anywhere from 10 to 14, 15 to 19, 20 to 24, 25 to 29, and then 30 plus. So this quarter I had 48 eyeshadow palettes that I used anywhere from 1 to 4 times, and that is an increase from the previous quarter. In quarter 2, I had reached for 46 palettes anywhere from 1 to 4 times, and then in quarter 1 I only reached for 27 palettes. So we went up in the 1 to 4 category. In the 5 to 9 category, I also went up. I ended this quarter at 11 palettes that I used anywhere from 5 to 9 times. That is an increase from quarter 2, where I only used 9 palettes in this category, and quarter 1 only 4 palettes. I did not have any palettes in the 10 to 14 category. I did have 1 eyeshadow palette in the 15 to 19 category, no palettes in 20 to 24, 1 palette in 25 to 29, and then 1 palette in the 30 plus category. I have had 1 palette in the 30 plus category all 3 quarters, and that is my Pan That palette, which is the ABH Sultry. So kind of a spoiler, but also if you know I'm doing Pan That palette, I feel like it's pretty obvious. So this video would be forever and a day long if I went through all 48 palettes that I reached for anywhere from 1 to 4 times. So I just start with the 5 to 9 category. And so basically we're gonna run through all 14 palettes in my collection that got used anywhere from 5 or more times this past quarter. So we will start with the 5 eyeshadow palettes that I reached for 5 total times the last 3 months. Starting with this palette right here, I have the Nomad Cosmetics Okavango palette. This is what this palette looks like. You'll notice there's quite a few palettes that are newer to my collection that are falling into these categories, and that is because in order for me to come back and rank palettes, I do want to have used and tested out each shadow in the palette at least 1 time. I like to shoot for like 3+ times. Sometimes that's not the most realistic, and I really like to try and see how many looks I can create with each eyeshadow palette in my collection. So I did reach for the Nomad Okavango palette 5 times. Next up we have the Odenzai Jewels and Gem palette, another new palette to my collection. This is such a beautiful palette. I've had so much fun playing around with this, and I'm excited to continue to reach for this. I feel like I should pair this palette with my ABH Sultry. Like, I feel like I could use the matte shades in this and then top it with like High or Rhapsody, and it could be really, really beautiful. But I have reached for this one 5 total times the last 3 months. And then I have my Natasha Denona Biba palette. I did roll this into a project to use it no pan left behind style, and I'm so glad that I did that because this is a palette that's been neglected in my collection the last couple of years, and I forgot just how much I absolutely love this palette, as well as just how much I love like a warm smoky eye for the fall time. Like, this was just giving me all the fall vibes and I was living for it. So really happy that this one has gotten more use this year already than it has at least the last year, if not 2 years. Then I have my Fantasy Cosmetica Druid palette. I feel like I've reached for this more than 5 times, but I have 5 tracked uses the last 3 months. This is the palette that is going in my project Level Up, so I anticipate we will see a lot more use, seeing as I need to hit pan on 2 shades or 2 pans within this palette. So as of right now, 5 uses the last 3 months. And then finally, another new palette to my collection is the Lethal Cosmetics Wildflower palette, and I reached for this one 5 times as well. Such a stunning palette. This is another one that I do kind of want to play around with some more the next few months, just having fun with some of the like duochrome and multi-chrome shades within this palette. They are really beautiful. Moving on to the palettes that I've reached for 6 total times, I do have 5 palettes that I've reached for 6 times as well. So up first, I have the What's Up Beauty Desert Monsoon palette. This is also new to my collection this year, and I have been absolutely loving this palette. These shimmer and metallic shades within this palette are absolutely stunning and so beautiful, and I've been so happy and so impressed with this palette. I'm excited to continue to reach for that as well. Then I have my Natasha Denona Gold palette, which I am also, which I am using in my No Pan Left Behind right now, trying to complete this palette. This is just, I'm so glad that that got rolled into No Pan Left Behind because I love and adore this palette. I think it's so beautiful, and it just gives me an excuse to reach into this more than I would. So 6 total times the last 3 months. Then I have my Huda Beauty Mercury Retro Grade, and I'm really happy that I've been reaching for this palette a little bit more than I have been as well, because I just adore this palette, but I find myself doing that thing where I struggle to reach for this because I know it's a palette that I love and I don't want to replace it. I don't know if I can replace it anymore. I do have a new pan in this palette. I have my first official pan. It is in the like lid setting shade within this palette, but I feel like I'm pretty close to pan on the shade Nebula up here as well. And the other day I did a look with Supernova and forgot just how beautiful this is. I also want to do a look with Gold Glitch here soon, so I anticipate this one is another one that will get some more use in the coming months. Then I have the Glaminatrix Nocturnal palette, which I've finally gotten around to testing, and I have been having so much fun playing with this palette. Yes, I've only reached for it 6 times, but I want to continue to keep reaching for this. Plus, this gives me like spooky season vibes. I think it's like these shades down here that just give me like, they just remind me of like spooky season, and I'm so excited to continue to play around with this. The mattes in here are pigmented yet buildable, which I really enjoy, really similar to the other Glaminatrix formulas that I've tried, and I love the special shades in this palette. Like, there are so many beautiful textures and finishes within the like metallic shades. It's such a stunning palette. So happy with this one. And then finally, this is my newest favorite palette to my collection, I swear. I have reached for this 6 total times and plan to continue to reach into the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural palette. It is so stunning. I've been talking about this a lot lately, so I don't want to drone on, but the matte formula is just impeccable. Again, pigmented yet buildable, very beginner friendly in my opinion. And then the metallics are just so buttery, so smooth, so soft, yet so intense and foiled on the eyes. It's just an absolutely beautiful palette. And then I have this palette right here, the Rowan 1111, which I have reached for 7 total times. So this is the 11th palette that is in the 5 to 9 category. And again, I reached for this 7 total times. I love this palette. I've reached this quite a bit this year. I actually replaced this palette because my daughter ruined mine, and I ended up purchasing it again because I love it so much. If you like a creamy textured formula on your eyelids, like a cream shadow, it's not cream to powder, it's like a cream, I think you would really enjoy this. I cannot recommend the Rowan little quads enough. I love them so much. I think they're beautiful, and the 1111 is my favorite. All right, you guys, I had one palette fall into the 15 to 19 category, and that was my NARS Rising Orgasm palette. This was my level 1 in my project Level Up, and I ended up reaching for this palette a total of 17 times in the last quarter. So this is the one palette that fell into the 15 to 19 category. I ended up dropping this palette, but let me just tell you, the pans in this palette are like the deepest I've ever seen. Like the deepest I've ever seen. I definitely want the new NARS palette for the holiday, even though I feel like I don't necessarily need it. I just can't deny that I like to collect the NARS eyeshadow palettes. I think they have a great formula. So reached for this one 17 times this quarter. All right, you guys, and then in the 25 to 29 category, I have the Kaleidos Escape Pod, and I reached for this 20 total times. This was my level 3 palette for the project Level Up, so that is why this one got so much use. It took some effort to get the 3 pans that I have in this palette, but I had so much fun reaching for this palette every single time out of those 28 uses. And even though I've reached this quite a bit, I would love to reach for it maybe a couple more times, just so end of year when I do my recap, this will be in the 30 plus category. Like, that would be really cool to have a couple palettes that I reached for over 30 times. And I'm so close with this one. In fact, I'd have to look back. I feel like I reached for the Escape Pod maybe like a couple more times earlier this year, maybe not. If not, I'll definitely get a couple more uses out of it because I want to reach for this shade specifically as a nail polish again before the end of the year. And I love the shade Starlight Sonata as an inner corner highlight, so I don't think it'll be a problem to reach for this 2 or 3 more times. Love it so much. Such a beautiful, colorful palette, and just such a great addition to my palette collection. All right, you guys, and then as I mentioned, the 30 plus, I have my ABH Sultry. This is my Pan That palette for this year. Oh no, I'm seeing my black shade is broken. Okay, I don't want to open this up too much because I don't want to spoil my Pan That palette update, which will be coming in just a few days. But I reached for this 45 total times this last quarter. I was feeling burnt out from this palette. I basically have been since like month 3 of doing a Pan That palette. I'm definitely going to rethink Pan That palette for next year, but 45 times I'm still really happy with, and I'm gonna keep chugging along. This is more like seasonally relevant to the winter in my opinion, and just the way that I like to do my makeup in the winter. So I anticipate I will have more than 45 uses for the last quarter of the year. I'm hoping to have 50 plus uses for the last quarter. That would be the goal, but this is my most used palette, and that should be no surprise. That should be the way it is as my Pan That palette. But you guys, those are all of the palettes, or those are the palettes that have gotten the most use in my collection this past quarter. I would love to know if you do something like this and if you track your palette usage. What was your most reached for palette recently? Let a girl know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel, as you guys always do. I appreciate it more than you know, and I will catch you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye.